Hello, this is lesson 7.1, adjacent and vertical angles. So on the left side of your spiral notebook, I want you to write this title, split your paper into 4 sections. Pause the video to do so, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, now on the upper left, you're going to be writing 2 vocabulary words, adjacent and vertical. And first, let's just zoom in. I'm going to zoom in on adjacent. I want you to pause the video so you can copy what you see for the word adjacent, including the picture. And when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, so the word adjacent angles, that's when there's angles, they share a common side and have the same vertex. Now, notice in this picture here, the vertex is the point of that angle. So like angle 1, there's always 2 rays that make an angle. So this is a ray here, shoots going in one direction, and this one's another ray, and they meet at this point. So this is the vertex. So this is angle 1, is this angle here, and I put a little arc. And then angle 2 is the other angle, and I have put little 2 arcs there, showing that there are 2 different angles here, and they share the same vertex. I often tell kids they're next to each other. So it's 2 angles that are next to each other, they share that common side. Now let's take a look at vertical angles. So here I want you to pause this video so you can copy this down. When you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, so now you should have written this down. Vertical angles are opposite angles formed by 2 intersecting lines. They are congruent. This is key. Congruent, now this word here means that they have the same measure. Okay, so when we're looking at this picture here there are 4 angles, and these black lines are the 2 intersecting lines. When you have 2 intersecting lines, you get 4 vertical angles. So 1 and 3, I've marked them with a red arc. Those are vertical angles. They are opposite each other, not next to each other. Notice they don't share a common side. They're completely opposite to each other. And they're going to be congruent, meaning they're going to have the same measurement. So if angle 1, let's say angle 1 is 85 degrees, then angle 3 will also be 85 degrees. Now, this symbol right here, this is the symbol for congruent. So just to let you know, it's an equal sign, and it has a little wavy line above the equal sign. So that means congruent. They're going to have the same measure. Now, in this picture, there's also another pair of congruent angles, and that's angle 4 and angle 2, because they're opposite from each other. So if angle 4 is, let's say it's 75 degrees, then angle 2 will be 75 degrees. So they will be equal to each other, and these 2 will be equal to each other. So they're across from one another, okay, opposite. Okay, now in the second box, I want you to pause the video so you can write what you see on your screen, and when you're ready to continue, press play. Please pause now. Okay, so for each of these problems, you should have written this down. Again, make sure you're pausing the video if you haven't done so, to write it down. That way you don't fall behind and get confused. So we're going to focus just on problem number 1. So we're going to first decide, are they vertical angles or are they adjacent? And in this case, the x and the 52 degrees, these are what we call adjacent because they share this ray here. Okay, they both have this ray. So we're going to say they're adjacent. Okay, so now we have to figure out the value of x. So notice that in this picture, if you see this square here, this square in geometry, this means that this is a right angle. So this angle is a right angle. And right angles, if you remember from elementary school, means that it equals 90 degrees. So I'm going to put here 90 degrees. Okay, put an arrow to the red square. Okay, so now it's 90 degrees. So that means these 2 angles, the adjacent angles, are going to equal 90 degrees. So they add up to 90 degrees. So we're going to write this equation. Okay, we're going to write an equation to solve for x. We're going to say x plus 52 equals 90 degrees. Okay, and now this is just a simple one-step equation. You circle the variable, you draw your line, and then to get rid of the plus 52, you subtract 52 from each side. Okay, and now here, we're now going to total it. We're going to have x, the 52's cancel out, is equal to, and then 90 minus 52 is 38. So x is 38 degrees. Okay, so with adjacent angles, just know for the purposes of this lesson, adjacent angles are going to add up to something. In this case, they add up to 90 degrees. Now let's take a look at problem 2. On problem 2, we first have to identify if they're adjacent or vertical. So we have x and 48 degrees. So here, these are not adjacent. They don't share a common side. They're opposite. In fact, if I were to color in the angle here, like color this green and color this angle green, they don't really touch each other except for that vertex, okay? So because they're vertical angles, we're going to first write vertical. So please write vertical and box it. But because they're vertical angles, remember what we said about vertical angles. Okay, this is key over here. Vertical angles, they are congruent, meaning they have the same measure. So since one of the angles is 48 degrees, then that means this angle is also 48 degrees. So there's no equation to solve. We just know that x equals 48 degrees. And then we write that down and we box it. Okay, for the bottom left box, copy what you see on your screen and press pause. And then when you're ready to continue, press play again. Please pause now. So these problems look very similar. They almost have the same exact picture, but notice that they have different parts of the angles labeled. So let's look at number 3. On number 3, we're going to zoom in on that. Okay, we're looking at angle X and angle 106 degrees. So if I were to color in angle X is this one here, okay? And then I would color in 106 degrees, that's this one here. Notice that they touch, okay? So that means they are next to each other. So they're adjacent. Please write adjacent on your paper and box it. Okay, and remember what I said earlier. Adjacent angles add up to something. So these two angles, there's no red square that we see, but notice that they make this half circle. Okay, together they make this half circle. So if I were to color this, and I want you to color your angle too a little bit better, so it kind of looks like a half circle together. The red and the orange section, they look like a half circle. When they make that half circle, that means they add up to 180 degrees. So these two angles make up a straight line, okay, because this is 106, and then from here to here is x. So they have that half circle there. So we're going to write an equation that adds up to 180 degrees. So x plus 106 equals 180. Okay, they make that half circle. And now we solve it like we did in the problem earlier. We circle the variable, you draw your line, and then you subtract 106 from each side. Okay. And then you're gonna have x on this side, the 106's cancel out. And then 180 minus 106 is going to be 74. And then let's label it degrees. So x is 74 degrees. Okay, now let's take a look at problem number 4. On problem number 4, now let's look at the 106 and the x, and let's color those parts of the their angles. Let's color them in. So here's the x, okay, and the 106 degrees just goes from here to here, so there's the 106. And now notice that they're opposite from one another. They're not adjacent, they're opposite, so we call them vertical. So go ahead and write vertical next to that problem. And right now is a good time for a movie clue. So if you're listening to this video, I want you to write a movie clue. Okay, that movie clue is going to be the word spring because we are just starting the spring season. First day of spring was just recently. So in the margin, next to problem number 4, write the word spring. All right, so now let's continue. Remember, vertical means if they're vertical angles, that means the angles are congruent. They're equal to each other, so there's no equation to solve. We just know that x is going to equal 106 degrees. And now box your answer. And that's all for your notes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.